Friday. Last night, everyone in my family agreed that our trip was off to a pretty terrible start, but we couldn't decide what to do next. I thought we should just admit this trip was a mistake and go back to Grandma's, but Dad said we couldn't turn around now because we hadn't done any actual camping yet. Dad said there was a national forest a few hours away, and if we camped there, we could stay in one place for the rest of the trip and relax for a change. I wasn't crazy about going off on our own, but I knew how the rest of the summer was gonna play off if we went back to Grandma's basement now. I didn't feel great about camping in the wilderness, but Dad said if we got into any trouble, there were rangers who could help us out, and that made me feel a little better. So we spent the night in the parking lot of the Adventure Center, and first thing in the morning, we headed for the National Forest. The ranger at the entrance told us it hadn't rained in a few weeks, so the risk of fire was really high. Then she gave Dad a map and a pamphlet with tips on how to camp responsibly. The forest was big, so it took a while for us to get to our campsite, and we didn't see a single human being on our way in. The campsite was actually really nice. There was a lot of space for the camper, and we were right next to a little stream. After we set up our hammock and chairs, we kicked back and enjoyed being out in nature. At least most of us did. After a few minutes, Mom asked what our quote-unquote plan was, and Dad said this was the plan. Tap, tap. Blip, blip, bleep. Mom said we couldn't just sit around all day, and we needed to do something active, like go on a nature hike or something. But that sounded like a lot of work to us guys, especially after a long drive. So Mom said if we were all gonna laze around, she was gonna put our electronics in the vault for the rest of the trip. And that was enough to get us moving. Mom pulled out the map and found a trail that was nearby. And before we headed off on the hike, she told everyone to fill up our canteens and put on bug spray. But I was a lot more worried about bears than bugs. I remember that the guy at the camping store said if you saw a bear out in nature, the best thing you could do was make noise to scare it away. Luckily, Uncle Gary left some pots and pans under the sink in the camper, but I wasn't gonna wait until we spotted a bear to start making a racket. Clang, clang. Everyone got annoyed with me pretty quick, and Mom told me I needed to bring the cookware back to the camper. She said I could catch up with them farther down the trail, and I was actually fine with that, because that stuff was pretty heavy anyway. Plus, I was starting to wonder if the noise might actually attract the bears, because whenever I hear pots and pans, I'm thinking dinner. After I put the cookware back in the camper, I turned around and got back on the trail. I thought if I hurried, it might take me 10 minutes to reconnect with everyone, but then I ran into a problem. The trail split, and I didn't know which way my family went. I figured the odds were 50-50, so I headed left. But I walked for a long time without finding them and figured I must have picked the wrong path. So I went back to the place where the fork in the trail was, and that's where I hit another snag. I was all turned around and couldn't remember which path was the one I hadn't taken yet and which one led back to the camper. And I couldn't tell which was which because to me, every tree and rock looked the same. That's when I started to get worried. I remember the guy at the camping store saying that sometimes bears will use human trails because it's easier than walking through the brush. So I really didn't feel good about hanging out in the middle of an intersection. I've read that a bear's sense of smell is 1,000 times better than a human's. So when I pulled out the container of lip balm I had in my pocket, I practically started hyperventilating. Organic honeybee lip balm. I decided to get off the trail, which turned out to be a dumb move, because once I was off the path, I couldn't find my way back. My mind started racing, and I thought about what would happen if I was lost for good. I've read stories about human beings who got cut off from civilization and were raised by wolves. I didn't know if there were any wolves in this forest, but there were plenty of squirrels. Chitter, 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 chitter. Luckily, my family found me before things could get too crazy, because in another hour or two, I might have been too far gone. Gobble, smack. When we got back to camp, Mom asked Roderick to check me for ticks, since I'd been off the trail. He looked me over and told me I had a huge tick right in the middle of my back. Roderick said the tick must have been on me for a while, because it looked like it was about to burst, and I almost passed out when he showed me the picture he took on his phone. It turns out it was just a joke, and the picture was something Roderick found online. But even after I knew it was a joke, I still felt like something was in the middle of my back for the rest of the day. Mom said everyone should take a shower, since it had been 2 days and we were starting to stink. Roderick went first, and he was in there for at least half an hour, so when it was my turn, there was no hot water left. Scream! Fled. Dad checked the propane tank and said it was empty, which meant it was cold showers from now on. No one was happy about that, especially Mom. I noticed it was really starting to smell in the bathroom, so I told the dad. He said the reason it stunk was because we hadn't emptied out the sewage tank yet. To be honest with you, I didn't even think about what happened to our waste in the camper. Back home, when you flush the toilet, everything gets magically whisked away to some faraway place. But in a camper, you're actually carrying that stuff around with you. If I had known that beforehand, I'm not sure I would have agreed to go on this trip. Slosh. Now I was starting to worry about what happened if the tank overflowed. So today, whenever someone looked like they needed to go number 2, I tried to talk them into taking it somewhere else. I guess I should be grateful we live in a time when toilets even exist. Roderick told me that the guy who invented the flushing toilet was named Thomas Crapper. And I don't know if that's true or if it's another one of his jokes. If it is true, I hope that guy made a ton of money. Because I wouldn't want a body function named after me. Yo, I'm gonna take a Greg. Dad got a fire going and cooked some beef stew. He was gonna serve baked beans to go with it, but Roderick left the can too close to the fire. And that was the end of that. Blam. After dinner, we tied up our trash and hoisted it in a tree with a rope, like the guy at the camping store told us to. I figured if any bear was smart enough to get at our trash, then they deserved to have it. By now, it was dark out, and Mom said we should turn in for the night. But Dad said the best part of camping was sitting around a campfire under the stars. Dad got Mom all excited, and she tried to get us to join in on a song that she said she learned at summer camp when she was a kid. But the rest of us aren't real big on sing-along, so we just waited for Mom to wrap it up. John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt, his name is my name too. After that, Dad brought out some marshmallows and we found some long sticks. While we were roasting our marshmallows over the fire, Dad got all serious. He told us that a long time ago he went camping with his dad and they met a crusty old ranger who told him a crazy story. The ranger said he used to have a beagle named Matilda and she'd follow him wherever he'd go. But then this one night, the ranger made a fire and he saw a weird creature with glowing red eyes prowling around the edge of the camp. Matilda chased after the creature and the ranger tracked her deep into the woods. But the only trace of the dog was a broken collar lying on the ground. Dad said that every night the ranger would sleep in his cabin alone, hoping Matilda would find her way back to him. And on nights just like tonight, when there was a crescent moon, he'd hear the howl of a beagle deep in the woods. Mom wasn't happy with Dad for telling that story because Manny seemed really shook up. And to be honest, I was a little spooked too. Then I heard a sound coming from deep in the woods that made my heart stop. For a split second, I thought it was the ghost of Matilda. But then I realized Roderick was missing, and the whole thing was one big joke Dad and Roderick were playing on the rest of us. But it kind of backfired, because when Roderick howled, Maddie jumped, and that's how Dad ended up with a flaming marshmallow stuck to his knee. Fling. Shrink! I think Dad was about to dive in the stream to put out the fire, but luckily Roderick remembered where we kept the fire extinguisher. Whoosh. Mom started giving Dad a lecture about why you should never scare people, but she got caught off by weird noises coming from the forest. At first, I thought it might be another joke, but the look in Dad's and Roderick's eyes told me it wasn't. Snuffle, grunt. Whatever was out there sounded big and was coming our way, so we piled into the camper and locked the door behind us. Sure enough, it was a bear, but it wasn't after our trash. It was after the baked beans. Lick, lick. Once the bear was done licking the beans off the camper, it wanted more, and I wish I could say we stayed calm, but I'd be lying. Scream! Slobber. Dad climbed into the driver's seat to get us out of there, but the keys were by the fire. And when the bear started rocking the camper, I thought it was over for us. I guess Matty did too, because he managed to scramble out of a window and get up on the roof. And he brought the flare gun with him.